In this second of two parts, we'll show how to draw the top and front view of an HS-55 servo in TurboCAD, going over some of the more common techniques. Continuing from part one, this is the side view of the HS-55 servo. One thing that I didn't do on the first part was to name the layer. It's always a good idea to name whatever layers you're going to do. We're only using one layer in this example, but still good practice. Using the scroll wheel, we can enlarge or minimize the size of the servo. And what we're going to do now for the top view is to put some construction lines using the snaps to the endpoints that allow us to accurately copy the dimensions of the servo without having to remeasure the lines. You can put any number of construction lines on that you want. They can be deleted, and as you'll see in the video, they can also be cutting edges. In this case, we're going to snap to the outer edge of the mounting arms for the servo. We'll use a parallel line tool and just drag it up with the inspector bar at the top, the correct distance for the width of the servo in the top view. Snapping to the endpoints, we could draw the other lines that describe the servo from the top view. And again, the construction lines are really handy because you can snap to the construction lines. And what we're going to do now is add additional construction lines for the central gear housing to draw that circle using a two-point circle tool on the top view. Once the circle is drawn, we can go to the selector with the grabber, just go ahead and place that circle in the middle of the top view. Right-click to construction lines, go to the bottom of that, we can delete all the construction lines. Using the fillet tool, 0.02 radius. Again, you need a smaller radius because this is a pretty small servo, only about 3/4 of an inch long. And again, the fillets are just for appearance sake on the corners. And always good to save your work with TurboCAD as you progress through the drawing. Now we're going to add the HS-55 label to it. We're going to just draw a box. It'll be about the size of the HS-55. Using the rotate tool, we'll turn it close to 90 degrees in the inspector bar towards the top. We'll type in 90, hit enter, and that puts it precisely 90 degrees where we had it before. Just move this off to the side. And then next we're going to select some text, and we're going to add text to the inside of that box. Notice when we select the text, it's a rather large font size. We'll type in Hitec first. And then with the pointer, notice that we can select that. And also with the inspector, with the Explorer, we can then pick another size, type of text. So there's a kind of cursive view for the text. Just pick out something that looks good. And then also we can get the size. Now notice it shrink down to almost nothing because we're zoomed pretty far out. As we zoom in, there is the font size right there. Now the font, like any object, can be copied and pasted. Now here's an important trick. We're going to change this to HS-55. Once we select that, notice up in the inspector window is the text. That's where you change the text. It's not on the object itself. So we type in HS-55, hit enter, and there's your text right there. So there's two separate text objects. We'll just drag that into the box. And here's the second one into the box. So we'll just put it where it looks pretty close to the center. Once that is done, we'll select all three objects, and under the edit command, we'll group them. That way we can move it around. It's all one group. We'll go ahead and rotate that 90 degrees. And once that is done, again, space bar, left click, we can drag it over and we can put the labeling for the servo onto the top view. And as I mentioned, always good to save. Now the next step is to draw the top servo arm. There's several ways to do this, mirror commands, etc. What we're going to do in this example is put some construction lines. So for the boundaries, and we'll just draw within that for the servo arm. Now notice I'd originally done the construction lines to the handles. That was a mistake. It should be on the servo arm itself. Again, just a demonstration that as you gain experience, you'll minimize these errors. Just delete the construction lines, put the new ones up. So now we're going to draw the servo arm. So again, dragging over with the line tool, holding the shift key to keep it level. We'll put it on either side of the construction lines. Now we will trim those construction lines to the correct width of the servo arm. And then we'll use the parallel line tool. We'll just check the length. And then use the parallel line tool to just drag up the distance, 0.75 inches, that is the servo arm that we measured on our sketch for the servo. Now that we have the top line in place, we can just use the line tool and just snap to the ends. And this is a square outline of the servo arm. Get rid of those construction lines. And now we'll build out the servo arm. And what we'll do is we'll take some lines with the line tool and we'll draw from the midpoint of each line to have a starting point to draw parallel lines to create the servo arms, then trim to shape. So these are the centers of both lines. Just snap to the midpoint. Now we'll use a parallel line tool, and measuring the size of the servo arm, we'll drag a line half that distance, or about 0.03 inches. And we'll do that for all four sides of the servo arm. And do a quick save. And we can get rid of those middle lines at this point. Just select and delete. And now we have to trim the extra lines that we used to create this. So we pick the cutting edge, and those are trimmed away. Cutting edge, trim the top and the bottom. Now, every now and then you'll run into an entity doesn't quite compute. What is typically the case is the lines don't quite cross the other line and you can't do the trim if that doesn't happen. So we'll just work through that. There's easy ways to fix this if you run into that problem. So notice we've got these two lines that are going to be difficult to trim. What we do is we simply select the lines, hit the delete key, then we'll redraw the lines just snapping to the endpoints. And now we'll finally trim, and we'll bound it. So we'll trim one side, hold down the shift key to keep the boundary, let go of the Shift key, click on the inside to get rid of that section. We'll do that again for the other lines. Trim, hold down the Shift key, let go of the Shift key, click, and do that again for the bottom. Now we'll use the fillet tool to curve the ends. Very easy to do. Again, for the fillet, it's about a radius of 0.02, very small curve radius for this small object. Now the circle tool will just draw visually a circle that looks about right for the hole in the servo arm. We'll place it, again for appearance, to look good right about there. Now that it's selected, we'll go to Edit, we'll copy and paste. It'll paste right on top of that, so we just simply select it, left click, hold it down, drag it. We'll do that for all 4 arms in the servo. I'll go ahead and save real quick. All right, so that completes the servo arm. Because that was a fair amount of work, what I like to do with these things is select everything, copy, paste, just so we have a clean copy of that to the side if we start making mistakes anywhere along the way. We'll select it again, center it on the circle for the top, and now we'll have to do trimming again to make that appear correct on top of the servo. Copy that and place it over on the side of the servo for the mounting hole on the side of the servo. We'll save. And we'll start trimming. So again, Shift to have the bounded area for the trim. Go back to the pointer and make sure we clear that. Another boundary. Click inside. Click once, hold down the Shift key, establish a boundary, let go, click on the inside. And same thing for this with the boundary. I like to zoom out a little bit every now and then just to take a look at it, see what I've missed. You can see there's one line on the bottom arm that we haven't yet done, and we'll get to that in a moment. Now that we're complete with that, we can get rid of that copy. Then final trim for that bottom servo arm. Hold on the Shift, bound it, let go, click, and that is all cleaned up. So now we can start thinking about the front view of the servo. Again, we lay out some construction lines, just snapping to the endpoints. Hold down the space bar, left click, and we can drag the picture to where we want. And now we can start adding some lines. Again, with the shift key, we'll keep it aligned 90 degrees straight up. We can trim that to just the right size or length. Then with the parallel line tool, we'll drag a parallel line the width of the front view of the servo that we measured before in our sketch. Snap to the endpoints. And a quick save. Now we'll add a central line to build the other portions from, dragging up the yellow handle to make the line a little bit longer. Again, this is just a center line placeholder we can draw parallel lines from as we complete the rest of the servo. So this is the width of the top of the gear housing. We've measured that so we know what half the diameter is. We drag another line to the other side. Then we can drag another line to establish the outer boundary of the servo arm, 0.75 inches in diameter for that servo arm. This will be the top of the gear housing for the servo, and we can draw in the upper and lower lines of the servo arm, snapping to the endpoints there. Quick save. And now we can start trimming to make the final end view of the servo. Again, before you start trimming, always make sure that nothing is selected. That'll just confuse the system. By going to the selector and getting rid of any selection in the drawing. As you practice at trimming, you'll start to establish a vision of where you're going. You can do this pretty quick. We're just taking it a step at a time so you can watch what's going on. Again, the cutting edge. And this will use a parallel line tool just to have the output shaft for the mounting for the servo arm. Now some further trimming of that. Simply select this line and delete it. It was a center line. We don't need that for anything right now. Right-click construction lines, delete all the construction lines. And then the fillet tool to put a curve on the top of the servo. And that is the completed 3-view using TurboCAD of an HS H-55 servo. Thank you for joining me on this instructional video, and good luck as you build components for your RC model airplane with TurboCAD.